Rainbow Six Extraction is interesting to me mainly in just that it's a free option on Game Pass for PC. So to be honest, this game wasn't really on my radar. But let's test it out on the GTX 1060. Now notice right here, we're seeing a dip in performance on the Ultra Native, but you can also tell a res scale is happening if you look at some of the fine details. Although to be honest, it still looks pretty sharp. So to answer the question, can the 1060 run this game at 60 FPS? The answer is yes, even at Ultra settings. Now notice the default settings for Ultra seem to turn on the dynamic resolution scale, and I do have the target frame rate set to 60. So what the game tries to do here is anytime it drops below 60 FPS, it's going to render the game at a lower resolution to try to actually maintain the 60 FPS. You can see through this whole interior scene that we've been looking at, the game has not had to use the resolution scaler. But at that little intro scene where we saw that creep stuff, I don't know what it's actually called, along the ground, we definitely had to use that res scaler. Now it's going to go into another scene here in a moment where it opens up an office environment and there's going to be some explosions. Keep your eye on the frame rates during these explosions. The desks are about to kind of blow up with some papers, and you'll see that this is another place where the native resolution drops significantly. We're going to see it again here. And I'll be honest, when it's these instantaneous dips, I think the resolution scaler here is extremely worth it. Because if your screen just fuzzes for a moment on an action scene with explosions happening, I've got to say, it's not all that noticeable. But we can also try turning down settings to maintain the 60 FPS rather than using the dynamic resolution scaler. And the question becomes, which one looks better? The resolution scaler, which makes things look fuzzy but maintains the highest settings, or lowering the settings a little bit. Look at the museum sign logo here a little bit, right? We can see that the wording in the letters is a little bit fuzzed using the resolution scaler, but you can see even going down to the very high settings instead of ultra, wasn't able to maintain the 60 FPS experience. Now let's take a look in the interior of the building where the Ultra is actually able to hold a native resolution. We're gaining a little bit of frame rate comparatively here on the very high settings, but visually, I don't know about you guys, but it's very difficult for me to actually spot much of a difference between these two. They really do look extremely similar. So I think it might be worth turning down to the very high settings. And don't forget that you could also use the resolution scaler on the very high settings, because again, we've got this side by side and I am really not seeing that big of a difference between the two at all. I mean, really, point it out in the comment section if you notice much in the way of actual noticeable differences, even though you can see at times where maybe a 10 frames per second difference. Let's take a look at this office scene. I'm again interested in if the very high settings help us on these dips. Okay, notice that it dropped to maybe 59 frames per second there for a second, but it does look like going down, oh, we dropped below 60 there a bit, but it does look like very high had a much better, handled those explosions much better than the native Ultra settings did. Although still, the dynamic scaler was able to smooth out those dips and keep us above 60 FPS. What we're going to look at now is what about dropping to the actual high settings rather than the very high settings. We're still comparing this to the Ultra dynamic scaler here. Now right here, this is where the dynamic scaler, if you look at the museum logo, some of the details on the chain link fence, it looks a little bit fuzzy. Whereas now we're finally having at high settings, we're able to stay at 60 FPS here without relying on the resolution scaler. So really, here's where we're gonna see, okay, which one's better then? Do you want to rely on the resolution scaler if you have to turn down some of these settings? I do think the shadow cast by that character right there that we just saw did look crisper on the Ultra settings. But it's not that it looked that bad at high. So I'm really trying to spot the little details here. But overall, I mean, look at the frame rate difference most of the time here. It's quite a big frame rate difference, but I really think there's not a lot of visual difference. It's mostly the shadows that I notice, but like I said, I don't think the shadows really look that bad at high. So given the frame rate gain that we're getting, I'm really feeling like these high settings are making a lot more sense than the ultra settings and a lot more sense than the very high settings. I mean, here we're pushing 100 FPS, right? Using the high at native. Let's take a look at these explosions. Let's see if it's able to handle these dips. Because remember, at the very high settings, as we left this office room, we did dip below 60 frames per second. And it's looking like, okay, let's see, as we turn this corner with this explosion, it seems like it pretty much held 60 FPS and above there. So I've got to say that I think my optimal settings are probably just going to be run the game at high and at native. Although there'd be no harm in targeting a 60 FPS dynamic scale, which it would probably never really need to use. But let's look at, do you gain much by then going down to medium? Is there much of a trade-off? It's really looking to me here. So notice here that on the right, we've moved this to high. So I've identified as the high settings as my preference. Let's look at medium and see if we can see much of a visual or frame rate difference. I mean, medium is certainly better frame rate in that scene, although high was able to stay at 60 FPS. I'll also mention that I've not overclocked my GTX 1060 here. So with some small overclocks, you could even help maintain that 60 FPS. Really, the frame rate and the visuals here are extremely close. So given that medium will have some things look slightly worse, I mean, we are turning the settings down, although to be honest, the visuals look really close. Given that it's not really gaining much in the way of frame rate, I'm not really seeing much point in going down to medium settings. Do notice that all of the game's presets are using the dynamic scaler, and sometimes it sets it pretty low. So I've increased the resolution back to native for both of these comparisons. All right, I mean, we can take a look as we go through the difficult office scene, but I think I'm just going to recommend playing this game at the high settings at native, and you could kick on the dynamic res scaler to whatever frame rate you don't want to drop below. It's looking like the GTX 1060 is going to do fantastic here, and other than the shadows looking a little worse, I couldn't tell that much of a difference compared to the ultra settings. And I think this will work well on both a high frame rate monitor or even just to lock 60 FPS without dipping below it on somebody with the 60 Hertz monitor. Although in that case, maybe using the dynamic scaler could have made sense because you're not going to take advantage from the big boost. Hope all of you have an excellent day.